I've been doing this for a long time. So back in 1995, I moved to California to go to USC, started training at Gold's Gym Venice and started training with Mike O'Hearn. And these guys are like a lot stronger than me. They're squatting 700-800 pounds and I'm around the 600-pound mark. And they basically said, hey, you're too fat. You got to lose weight. You can't be 240.
To be competitive, you got to drop to the next weight class.
You need to be in the 198 weight class. I'm like, I have no idea how to do that. You know, I'm just a kid from Poughkeepsie that moved out here. I have no idea what the bodybuilding lifestyle is about, anything. And he said, look, just eat red meat and water until you're
What?
Yeah, red meat and water. So I did that for I don't know, whatever. When I came back from New York to go back to school and lift with these guys again after the summer, I think I weighed 196. And
what were your shits like, and how often did they come out?
No,
Was it
it's
like every
fine.
4 or 5
Absolutely.
days?
You got to lift up a manhole cover and just take a shit right in there.
Why did you stop eating like that?
I just don't think it's sustainable forever.
One of the most profound things that's happened to me in my 35 years of lifting and training has been the carnivore diet. Now, what is a carnivore diet, you might ask? Well, it's just like it sounds. It's a simple diet of meat and water. It's really simple to apply, and it flies in the face of a lot of nutrition experts, and they hate it. And the reason why they hate it is because it's very, very effective. We've seen it be effective to treat a lot of autoimmune conditions. We've seen it effective for weight loss. We've seen it very, very effective for body recomposition. And we've seen it just help a lot of people just feel better about themselves in general. It's helped with mental health as well as physical health. So how do you get on a carnivore diet? Well, we're going to answer that question. I sit down with my brother Mark and we talk about all the ups and downs and ins and outs of the carnivore diet. So get ready, because World Carnivore Month is coming up and we want you to be a part of it.
Fighting out of Sacramento, California!
Woo! What's it gonna do?
Better. Stronger.
Son of a bitch.
Faster.
Oh yeah!
We ready to rock?
Yeah, you're on.
Cool. I'm ready. All right, so happy holidays, everybody. What I wanted to do is a podcast for you guys. We have World Carnivore Month coming up. I'm sitting here with my brother, Mark Bell.
Hey.
And we've been doing these diets for a really long time. Since when? Like college days for me?
Yeah, like 20, 30 years and nothing.
It's done nothing.
We're
Yeah.
getting nowhere.
But, you know, more recently with in the past couple of years with people like Sean Baker coming out and calling it a carnivore diet and giving it a name and sort of putting a little bit of, self-science, I guess. What do you call it? Citizen science together with some actual real science now that's coming into play that people are seeing. The carnivore diet seems to be a great way for people to jumpstart their fitness, or to dive into a new fitness plan, or to just sort of like reset themselves. We've seen it help a lot of people with things like arthritis and pain and inflammation, but we don't want to get too carried away with that stuff. I think that what's even more important is that people just do this as a test of their will, you know? I think what I want to do is challenge everybody out there, just give the carnivore diet a try, and see if you can make it through 30 days of doing it. So World Carnivore Month starts January 1st, and the rules are simple. It's basically like, we say red meat and water, but I feel like it's red meat and any other meat, chicken, fish, and then like eggs are really important as well. I would say we'll talk about this in more depth, but dairy is something that's sort of controversial. You can have it, but if you're really trying to get rid of all these little aches and pains that you have or little medical issues that you have, it might be better to just drop dairy out for a while and see how you feel on just sort of meat and water. So what I wanted to first do is just sort of ask you, how did you get into doing these carnivore diets, and what have you seen with it?
Got into carnivore diet from you talking about Sean Baker. I previously didn't have any knowledge of him or the diet, although, you know, we've had a war on carbs for a long time. We've primarily eaten meat. We had a meat diet. I think there's many, many people that have what I would like to call a meat diet. I think that's a little easier for people to wrap their mind around. And because then if you have a meat-based diet, you can a lot of other But I think word challenge is a good word, and people are kind of confused about challenge. I do it 30 days, and then what? I hear people all the time say, "Tried that diet. As soon as I came off it, I gained a ton of weight." Of course you did, because unfortunately you went back to habits that you didn't switch from one diet to another. It would have probably made more sense, because most of us, fortunately, most Americans are already heavier than they want to be. So you need some sort of like protocol. Carnivore diet is a great 15-second pitch elevator diet. You could say, hey, it's pretty simple. I eat meat and I eat water. And, there's a lot of people get all crazy about, can you only survive on meat? But let's face the facts. Most people that do a carnivore style diet, most aren't as into it as Sean Baker. They're not as into it as Paul Saladino. They're not as into it as the Emmerichs. They're not. So most people will cheat on their diet. And so therefore it's like, doesn't really matter about how sustainable it is. It's a matter of, is it effective? But I think that the times that we're in, people don't necessarily need just like so much diet information. They just need suggestions and strategies. You just need strategy. So what's helped me the most with a carnivore diet is to I primarily try to only eat meat. I end up messing up all the time, but I primarily try to eat meat. And if I'm not hungry for meat, then it means I'm actually not hungry. I call that fake hunger. And so I think a good discipline for people to start to work on is, are you actually hungry? And to be buddies with hunger, and to understand you're always going to be hungry. When I was 330 pounds, I was hungry. When I lost the weight and got down to what I am now, which was I think it was 230 this morning. So, I've lost 100 pounds, and I was hungry then, and I'm hungry now. I'm pretty hungry almost all the time. And so fasting, even though fasting and carnivore, they don't have to go together, they sort of inadvertently go together anyway, because when you eat a big steak, it's going to calm you down for a little while. So that's kind of the only time I'm not hungry, is like right after I ate. But then even after 5 minutes, I want to eat again. So once you kind of you start to limit and carve out a lot of food choices, you get rid of a lot of the noise, and it just gets to be, it's simple.
Yeah.
It might not feel easy, but it's a simplified diet. I just want to finish on one last point, because I think one of the things that flares people up so much about the carnivore diet, imagine studying something your entire life. You pour time, effort, and money into it. You start to learn about nutrition in high school. You're fired up about it. You read every magazine that you get your hands on. You go to college. You go to college for however many years it takes to get a PhD. You get a PhD in nutrition, and you learn about energy balance and intake and output and all this stuff. He comes along and says, eat meat.
Meat and water.
And you want to be a denier of it, I think. And I think that's kind of what happens. It is a very, very simple diet. It really doesn't have, I think that what you'll land on is a diet that has a little bit of vegetable, probably a little bit of fruit.
Yeah, I look at it as like my maintenance carnivore diet, because I pretty much do carnivore like year round, and I go in and out of it. Even when I just recently experimented with Stan Efferding's vertical diet, which I would recommend to everybody as like a good baseline diet, something that like anybody could follow really.
Yep.
So I put rice into my so-called carnivore diet, but all it was basically meat, all sorts of different
Russell,
meats.
do you know about this? You know about he was eating rice on the side?
I'm in this gram, so I saw it. I saw it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I
This
actually
is a blow right here. This is,
Yeah, he
this is
put
not
a bag
easy.
of salad the other day as well. So
I'm really uncomfortable on the show now.
hashtag carnivore with a bag of lettuce right there. With
Yeah.
And by the way,
A
our
bag of lettuce too.
producer Russell, he's done the carnivore diet as well over there and had some success with it, right, for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna get back on it, I think, in World
Back
Carnivore
on it.
Month.
We're on.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say is I actually think that the carnivore diet, if you look at it as like you're going on almost like a month-long steak fast. You know what I mean? Like it's that simple. It's like I'm going to fast every day, and then I'm gonna eat a steak right? And then I'm going to fast some more, and then I'm going to maybe eat another steak, and maybe even another steak.
I try to do 3 ribeyes a day for 3 days, and it was actually really
Yeah, and
it was hard to do.
And
Hard to get through that much food.
And also, like, most of the time I do eat Piedmontese beef, and Piedmontese beef is just a breed of cattle that's leaner than other cattle. It has about half the fat of any sort of normal steak. But I actually don't necessarily recommend that. Like, you don't have to have that during World Carnivore Month because you need the fat. But a good way to counter that is if you like putting butter on your steaks or things like that, you can buy Piedmontese beef and add butter. You can cook it in beef tallow. You can add fats. It gives you some room to add fats in some other areas. But I just look at it as simple as like fast as long as you can, and then eat a steak, and then fast as long as you can. The one problem that I experienced when we had Michaela Peterson in town, and she was awesome to talk to, and she said, you know what, you have to get on my diet, the Lion diet. It's just meat and water and salt. And so I actually tried that for about a week.
It's a great reset.
It was great, and I actually lost a bunch of weight really quick. I even texted her. I was so excited. Like, my weight just dropped, probably because you drop a lot of water. But the water I was dropping was out of my butt. It was, it was, and Joe Rogan says that too a lot. He's like, I do not trust my butthole.
You get the Dumb and Dumber shits.
Yeah, and the reason
you're not using the toilet.
the reason why that happens is, your body needs to dump a lot of these, no pun intended, electrolytes and carbs and things like that out. And as you're, transitioning over, your gut bacteria is making a transition and all these things. So what I'd like to tell people is that I right now am doing a thing called no carbs till Christmas, right? It's just a way for me to limit myself because I know myself. I tend to eat really bad around the holidays. So if I go no carbs till Christmas, then I carved out this section where I know I'm going to eat good for a month. I'm going to maybe eat some stuff during the Christmas little break, and then World Carnivore Month starts. I don't have any plans to really eat bad, but it's just if it happens, right? But
what about your strength? That's like a question I get asked all the time. It's two big questions, like strength and lipid profile.
Well, if you go back on my Instagram, even like this week,
Have you gotten weaker from doing it?
I posted this thing. We squatted the other day, right here. We squatted. We went up to.
Hottie's kid is so cute.
Yeah, I think we went up to 505 pounds or something like that. And I did that. That's on a box. It's a box squat. Did it for like 6 reps, right? And yes, I'm on TRT. That's the first question everybody's gonna ask.
And I drink a lot of chili. I'm trying to sleep the whole time.
But my TRT dosage is 100 milligrams a week, which is like lower than a lot
I've
of.
seen you lift very similar.
Yeah. So for me, the weights never change. I think the problem for a lot of people and the drop off is going to be if you're a power lifter and you're used to eating carbs every day and training with carbs every day, and then you basically jump out of that and go on a carnivore diet, you're probably going to experience a month or maybe even 2 months of like reduced strength. But it all comes back to, in my opinion, it all comes back as you continue to like eat more and get used to the diet and your gut switches over and all those things. I don't recommend it for like a top level athlete because they don't need to be that strict. So I've actually made my own diet where I allow a couple things in the diet extra that I think can really help with your digestion. Like, for example, almost every day I eat a salad, and it's just like iceberg lettuce, which has nothing in it either way. So a lot of people talk about these plant toxins and all these things being really bad for you. Well, iceberg lettuce has nothing in it except for a little bit of fiber. Why not just eat that? It's mostly water. It's got, the whole bag has less than 100 calories, a whole bag of lettuce.
Gives you some filler.
And it gives you some filler. And people are like,
someone could do the same thing you would say with like green beans.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And people argue, you don't need the filler and blah, blah. You don't need it, but there's also problems associated with eating too much meat. Like, can you eat too much meat? Well, yes, you can eventually eat too much
food. And I think about all the dangerous shit a human being can do. Probably one of the most dangerous things you can do is just open calories. Like, you're going to run into every ailment and problem kind of known to man.
Yeah.
Metabolic diseases, along with some that are like kind of, you're not even sure if they have to do with your metabolism or how they came about, but it will weaken you. We're not designed for that.
And I have to give props to Layden Norton, who had told me, hey, you're just over consuming calories. You're getting inflammation, not because you're eating something that's not meat.
Yeah.
It's because you're consuming too many calories. Because I would tell him, like, hey, I'd be on this carnivore diet and I'd be doing great. And I have one day where I'd eat like Ben and Jerry's and I'd be so inflamed.
I think inflammation is fake news. I don't think it. I think that people are probably talking about it the wrong way. If you eat a bunch of junk, you'll feel junky. If you eat healthy, you'll feel healthy. But if you overconsume calories all the time, your system's just kind of overloaded. You're bogged down. I mean, just think about if you just ate a big meal, how hard it would be to like go for a run or something. So I think the inflammation thing is just really, really way overblown. If you go on a low carb diet, you'll notice that you'll lose water weight. Does that mean that your markers of health for inflammation go down?
No.
It could mean that, but
Probably
it also may not. It kind of reminds me of years ago when people were really big on like icing things, like after they got injured, and then there was a lot of controversy on whether, so the main thing is that ice, it's not that it doesn't work, so we were looking at it the wrong way. And I think with inflammation, I just don't think it's an area to hone in on and try to focus on. The area to hone in and focus on is how are you looking in the mirror, what do you weigh, and how's your performance in the gym? If you're a person that cares about those, that's the direction you're trying to go. What's your everyday life like? Are you able to get up and down the stairs? And I remember they showed Jerome Bettis, the bus, one year. They showed him just trying to go up the stairs to go to bed. And it took him like 10 minutes. And he's like holding onto the railing and he's doing all this stuff. That's a guy that played professional football, for like 15 years. So his body was pretty banged up. He put himself through a lot. So but you shouldn't feel that way every day if you're not really pushing yourself very much. But there's a lot of people that are in tons of pain, and a lot of it does have to do with their diet. But I think that trying to figure out inflammation, and we hear so many people talk about it, and they'll say like, I did the carnivore diet and it got rid of all my inflammation. They say stuff like that, and it's like, man, I hate those messages because it's just misleading.
And I was kind of guilty of that in the beginning because you get excited. You just get excited when someone's feeling better.
Anything that you've done that assisted you to gain control over your bad habits is going to have massively positive results. You need to work on with people. And I say with people, so we're not fighting and butting heads. Is people need more willpower.
Yeah. And
the only way to increase your willpower, the only way to be stronger with your willpower is to work on it, is to work through it every day, lift through it, run through it, walk through it. You want to build yourself into the kind of person that has some unflinching discipline. You mentioned in the beginning of the podcast talking about having some willpower to, will is made up. You make it up. You ever hear someone just say like they made up their mind? I made up my mind. I'm going to Spider-Man today. Well, you get to do that with everything. I made up my mind. I'm going to lose 100 pounds. You can leave it in the rearview mirror and never look back again.
And that's the challenge like I want to give to people. We have a woman that comes into the gym, and she was like asking me, she doesn't have a boyfriend and stuff, and she's like asking me like, why don't guys find me attractive? And I said, really, it's not because you're not attractive. It's because you don't have the confidence in yourself. And I'm like, I'm trying to get her to do the carnivore diet just to challenge her to something. I said, if you do this, I feel that you'll feel really good about yourself and you'll carry yourself completely differently. And the things that you want in life will come to you. I'm not guaranteeing that you'll get a boyfriend out of it, but I guarantee if you look and feel better, that you will act differently. And I know that from my own experience. When I get lean and in really good shape, it's really a lot easier for me to be happy and for me to be nice to people because I feel really good about what I'm doing and the choices I've made. I feel solid. And when I'm not, I feel like maybe like a mess and a failure, sort of like when I was an alcoholic and a drug addict. They have very similar relationship into like how you present yourself and how you feel.
Difficult is it to motivate and inspire, and to even make a post on social media when you don't feel confident, or you messed up on your diet, or the last couple of days have actually been rough, right? It's hard it doesn't matter who it is, it doesn't matter how go up the ladder all the way to The Rock or whoever, everyone kind of has like these ups and downs and things like that. But if you can start to ingrain certain habits, they end up being part of your character. That's when people go,
Yeah.
I got here every day. Josh Settlage, he made up his mind that he's going to be, one of those early risers, and he gets in here at 4 a.m. and works out. But I think there's also a misconception that you have to be you don't have to be that way, but you do need to make up your mind that you're going to do stuff, because if you don't do something, you're not going to be something. When somebody says, I want to be more attractive, or I want to be more successful, the way to be more attractive and the way to be more successful is to have attractive habits. It's not very attractive. You could take the hottest girl in the world, but if they're completely hammered and floppy and they're like,
Hey now.
Yeah,
That's perfect for me.
Yeah, some opportunity maybe is arising, right? But it's not very attractive. Or if they're really mean and rude, and it's just like they sink right to the bottom. But look at some of the people that we do know that they're beautiful people. They have nice things to say. They're happy. They're excited. It feels great to be around those people. You want to work your way towards being that kind of person. But I think it's very hard to be that kind of person if you're not putting in some of the work.
How would you define, let's just go back a little bit to the beginning, what is a carnivore diet in your opinion, and how would you define it to people? Like how would they get started on this if they want to do World Carnivore Month and follow us while we do it? What should people be eating and doing in your opinion?
I think rule number one is to try to figure out a way to mix it up a little bit. There's a lot of different food choices. When someone says you can only eat meat, I think most people are probably thinking like affordable and convenience. They're probably almost all the time thinking of like ground beef. They're thinking of going to the store and getting that tube of ground beef that's just disgusting. You got beef, you have chicken, lamb, you have pork, and if you're into game stuff, you have elk and bison and bisons. But anyway, you got elk, bison, and all kinds of other venison, and just be creative with it. Have fun. There's so many different ways.
Yeah, any sort of seafood is fine.
Yeah, right. I use a crock pot quite a bit. I mixed. I took oxtail, just some seasoning and roast. Threw it all in the crock pot, and it was amazing. Crock pot stuff is interesting because it kind of always turns into crock pot stuff. But there's different ways that you can mess with it. You can throw like chili verde in there, or you can throw salsa, or what. You can just cook it just by itself. You can just throw just meat in there. You don't have to put anything else in there at all. You don't need any liquid, and it will cook. You just leave it on your counter. I think that you use your little oven thing, right, all the time.
I use a Ninja Foodie Grill.
Yeah, what are those things called?
Ninja Foodie Grill.
No, I know.
It's like an air fryer.
Air fryer. There we go. That was the word I was looking for.
I just said it.
Yeah. Air fryers are super convenient, but your food is, you have any type of meat that you want cooked in whatever fashion that you'd like. Some people even eat shit raw. And then you got eggs. I have personally not messed around too much with liver and kidney and heart and spleen to really make a judgment call on hey, this made me feel insanely that much better. I feel really pretty damn good on almost every day anyway, so it would be hard for me to make that judgment call. But I have supplemented with it before. I did like it, but I'm not sure what it did or didn't do. I guess my point there is I don't know how far out of your way you need to really concern yourself with eating. Find stuff that you like and put it on repeat. But people ask us all the time, how do you cook your steak? You're using your air fryer? I cook my stuff right in my frying pan.
Well, this is a secret to everybody out there. The Ninja Foodie Grill is one of the most, I talk about it so much. it's one of the most amazing tools, in my opinion, known to man for cooking anything. Like yesterday, I cooked chicken thighs. I dipped it in egg wash, which is just a beat up egg with some cream in it. Dipped it in the egg wash, dipped it in pork panko, which is just chicharrones or pork rinds crushed up. And then I made fried chicken.
That sounds awesome.
It was amazing.
It looked good.
It was amazing. And I make chaffles. I take eggs, mix them with some shredded cheese in a blender, and I pour them in a waffle maker, and I make these amazing chaffles.
They're unbelievable.
Yesterday I made, I used a little bit of PB2, which is a peanut butter replacement, with sugar-free maple syrup, and it's like a peanut butter chaffle. It's the most incredible thing that you can make.
Right.
Yeah, there's a little bit of non-animal products, and there's a little bit of PB2 and some sugar-free maple syrup.
Right.
But I don't see those things as a barrier to doing this diet. I use all sorts of sauces. There's a company called G. Hughes. They sell everything at Walmart. And they have everything from Yum Yum sauce, which is incredible to like dip things in. And you have to be careful because Yum Yum sauce and the famous clucking sauce that they make, that's like a Chick-fil-A substitute, those have a lot of fat in them.
Right.
But most of the other ones have no fat and no carbs in them, or really low fat and really low carbs in them. And they're all sugar-free. So there's like sauces and marinades. I think the teriyaki, if you like teriyaki stuff, and even like most kids like teriyaki chicken and teriyaki beef, you can easily make that with G. Hughes sauces, and they only have like 5 calories. I'd be careful on a lot of the other main brand sauces, and even like things like ketchup. It's not going to completely throw you off. Like I've heard some ridiculous statements like, if you've had ketchup, you've blown it. I don't think it goes that far because I've done this carnivore diet where I've eaten regular ketchup, and to be honest with you, it didn't really make that much of a difference having a little ketchup or not. I would say I try to avoid almost everything that's out of the realm, but some things you can't avoid sometimes, so you have them, and I don't think it makes that much of a difference. My advice to a lot of people is, if they are having trouble with digestion, like you're getting that, first of all, you need to have a lot of salt. You need to have a lot of fatty meat and a lot of salt. So buy the fatty chicken thighs, buy the fatty beef, ground beef. Don't be worried about fat for this particular month, and just eat until you're full. Not really past being, overly stuff yourself. Just eat until you're full, and then again fast until the next meal and eat again. But remember to have enough salt, to have enough fat. And, by doing this, what it did for me, I went from a ketogenic diet. I was on a ketogenic diet. I did really well. I tested my ketones like 3 times a day. I was always in ketosis. And then I switched over to a carnivore diet, and I was really strict in the beginning. And I was still pricking my finger and seeing if I was in ketosis. 75% of the time, I was in ketosis when I first started doing this. And then I just, like, you kept saying, that's dumb. Those keto things, like, it doesn't mean anything. And it took me a long time for you to convince me that was, like, just a thing that was unnecessary. It's very expensive to constantly check your ketones. And also, it was actually driving me crazy. If I wasn't in ketosis, I felt like a failure. Shit, I'm not in ketosis. What do I do now? So I don't think it's that important. And so I sort of dropped that as a rule for myself. And in doing that, I've also added some things in. Like I said, I eat like different lettuce blends. Like I'll just go into the store and grab a bag of lettuce, and it might be romaine or it might be iceberg lettuce, and I'll throw some balsamic vinegar and some olive oil on that, which I know is not carnivore. But I'll have that as like a warm up to my steak, or I'll chop up my steak and throw it on top of that salad or in that salad. And that's a great meal, especially if you're eating something like a Piedmontese steak, which I eat most of the time. You need some more fat in it, so more fat with it. And we know, if you look at all the studies of like fats and whatever, that olive oil is actually really healthy and really good for you. So having some olive oil instead of some beef fat once in a while is completely fine.
All right.
I believe we have a question coming in from
Yeah,
Russell,
Question from the
buddy.
audience. If I was an obese male and I wanted to know, moderately active, how many pounds of ground beef, how many eggs a day, or ounces. Maybe the pounds is the wrong word.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah.
Just
How
so
many
we get
car-
our mindset
Yeah,
right.
How many
cartons?
cartons of eggs? Yeah.
How many dozen eggs a day and how many pounds of ground beef would you start off with? Just for your average obese male, just like going into this.
So what I know from listening to people like Greg Doucette is that when you're when you have somebody that's like, over like 250 pounds,
Right.
you probably want to cap the protein at like 250.
Right.
Because you don't want to give somebody an unrealistic protein like, hey, why don't you have 400 grams of protein? You're like,
Right.
wow, that's a lot of protein to be taken in.
It's good to hit a marker with the eggs. Like kind of have an egg minimum. I think getting in like every day is probably a good idea, just for vitamins and nutrients and minerals that are in there.
No cholesterol flashes from too much eggs.
You will have a raise in cholesterol if you're going to eat it. If you're eating a lot of eggs, you definitely like raise your cholesterol. Is it dangerous over the course of a month? Not at all. Like diet
They
taking
also
in.
say that triglycerides are also something that someone wants to be mindful of it. That would be something that you have more.
And your triglycerides should drop way down if you're not eating carbohydrates. It should drop.
But
So.
also, you have to understand that whenever you're trying something new, in a little while, it's going to change everything. So your blood work might be thrown for a loop.
Uh-huh.
Just like we know that you end up on the toilet. Sometimes people end up on the toilet from doing carnivore diet. So any change in the food that you eat is going to result in changes in your blood, which might not be favorable at first, but over time it might correct or it might get better. And the same thing with your stomach. Whenever you're implementing anything new, you're consuming different types of food. Some people are on the toilet nonstop, and some people.
Yeah. My problem was when I just did beef and water, I was on the toilet nonstop. The way to fix it was simple. I had a salad,
And that fix it like right away, or to take a couple.
It pretty much fixed it like pretty quick. Like I had a salad. I actually, the very first time it happened, I should be very honest here. The very first time it happened, I had rice and a banana because it was so bad. And I was like reading online, like what gets rid of like diarrhea. So it said rice and bananas are really good. They're really mellow, blah, blah. So I ate.
Bananas kind of works as like a plug.
Yeah, I stuck the banana right up there and it fit perfect. And then
Problem solved.
I ate the rice and blew it all out. No. Yeah, so the rice and the banana really, really helped. But then after I did that, I'm like, well, I don't want to fix it with carbs necessarily. So like maybe if I had a salad or whatever, having a salad helped it. So I just think that if you're having problems with the bathroom, I think electrolytes could be a problem. You may need more like salt in your diet because a lot of this is dumping of like these electrolytes, and you might need more electrolytes, and you might need something like a salad or a little bit of fiber or roughage in your body to help that move along.
It most likely would subside on itself too, don't you think? Things should normalize pretty quickly.
I think so. Yeah, I haven't dealt with the problem of constipation from it, but I can imagine like I said, the things that are normal natural laxatives would work in that case. And so coming up on this year, we have World Carnivore Month. Right, I'm pumped about it. I'm excited about it. The thing, like I said, that I'm most excited about is just to see some new people try this, and see new people sort of like, get into the carnivore diet. And the one thing I want to make sure of is I think people get so dogmatic about it being like, just meat and water and nothing else. And I want to make sure that people don't do that. They don't see this as a prison that they're stuck in. They see it as an opportunity to to do new things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of good points. I also think that it's a good idea to work on your taste buds, and to work on like having them have almost like a regression, and a lot of times I think people have what I would consider gas station taste buds. and they tend to really like ketchup and a lot of stuff that a lot of people, barbecue sauce, all these different. Those things are all really easy to like. They're all really easy to love. But see if you can love the natural flavors of stuff and see even figure out how to taste those things. Like a lot of times you won't even taste them. Remember when you were a kid, if you put your tongue on the battery, you know, that burn tongue, or if you something like, you know, if you're to eat something after that, you can't taste anything. Or if you're to brush your teeth, you know, as soon as you go to eat, it's just not as good. I think that people need to figure out a way to retrain their taste buds for a while. Then you'll actually recognize that meat has a lot of flavor in it. I'm suggesting don't even put any salt on it. Just, I'm not saying you need to eat this all the time. I'm just saying, like, you know, as you're cooking or something, just try it and do it and learn how it's supposed to actually taste. I think that people, they would be shocked if they knew that like arugula or something like that has a little bit of like a nutty flavor to it. There's flavor in there. Might not be something that people really love, but there's a lot of flavor in there. But we just take so many sauces and things and just dump them all over everything. So I think especially people that have had bigger challenges with their nutrition and with their diet, see if you can go with kind of a little bit more single ingredient stuff. See if you can hold off on some of the sauces. I'm not saying you can't use them for the month. I'm just saying, just as you're cooking, eat a little bit of stuff here and there. It doesn't have any of that. What you'll learn is after a while, you won't care as much about having those. Because all the sauces and all the different things, they still encourage you to. And people don't need any more. They need help trying to figure out a way to eat less. The magic of any diet is to try to figure out how to have you gain some control over your nutrition when it comes to a carnivore diet. Because you're eating a good amount of protein, it can be very satiating. The fat can be satiating. Well, fat will slow down the digestion of food that you ate, and it will give you kind of a little pulse of your food, you know, almost kind of throughout the day, depending on how much you ate and how long ago. But it should keep you pretty satisfied, pretty satiated for most of the day. And I think that's something that makes the carnivore diet maybe a little bit different than people being used to like snacking or trying to eat type of stuff. Like when we hung out with Sean Baker, and he just we trained with him, and then he just smashed some meat, right? And just anytime he's not hungry, he just doesn't eat. Yeah. And I think that's
and Sean doesn't really use any sauces or anything. Like his answer to that is to eat more, which is probably a pretty good answer for a lot of people.
It's not easy to do, but it's worth giving a try to. And then I'd also say that at least for the first week or two, just like go for it. Eat a lot of food.
Yeah.
Eat a lot of food.
And
just, you know, I would be careful. Like if you're going to eat often, then I would watch the fat calories. There's, in my opinion, there's, I mean, maybe somebody can give me some good reason. There's not a lot of reasons for anyone to go over 200 grams. There's just an opinion of mine, but I don't really think there's a reason to do that. Going under 50 grams of fat is just really bad news. Don't really do that ever. And then grams of protein, they're set for you by whatever you weigh. You know, 1 pound per. You know, but you don't really actually need that much protein. But as I kind of often say, is that you need to eat something. 1 gram of protein per body weight usually.
Yeah. For people. And it ends up being kind of a lot of meat. You know, you can eat like, you know, 2-3 pounds of meat to reach your calorie goals.
And if you mess up, just don't worry about it.
And then as far as resetting your taste buds, I think it's okay for people to drink whatever they want, as long as it doesn't have calories in it. So like it could be any 0-calorie thing, but there's a caveat to that too. It's like if you want to retrain your taste buds, I suggest that you just drink water or sparkling water for like 2 weeks, right? Yeah. I have a big problem with diet soda. Like I love Zevia, and I can drink.
We've gone through periods of time of mainly.
Yeah, but I can drink like a ton of diet soda. Like I can hammer.
Just take it as a challenge too, though. Just drink water.
Yeah, so that's my challenge myself is this month is try to drink more water and less of the other stuff. Maybe even just cutting out, might even just cut out the other stuff. I do drink a lot of Zevia, but the other thing that I think is good, not that I think it's necessarily good, but coffee is a good way to be able to fast, right?
Great.
There's a couple tools that are really good for fasting. I think drinking coffee or any hot beverage, you can take like Slingshot protein, which is a whey protein, which is animal based, which is fine on a carnivore diet. You can mix up some Slingshot protein or any protein, but Slingshot's good, I know, for this. Mix it up with some water and microwave it and make like a hot chocolate. And that's really good.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Any sort of hot beverage is going to be able to sort of satisfy you for a little while so you don't feel hungry.
I like bone broth. It's really good.
Yeah, that's another one I was going to mention. Bone broth. Bone broth is actually the perfect one because that's right in line with the carnivore diet. I mean, if you like bone broth, I would definitely load up on bone broth and use that as a
Bone
tool.
broth is interesting because it doesn't really. There's not a lot of flavor to it. I mean, depending on the brand and stuff, it doesn't really taste like a whole lot. You have to kind of season it yourself. So, but you can kind of make it turn into whatever you want. It's just
Yeah.
and I think you can do like people will have like chicken stock and things like that. I don't think they're as nutritious as bone broth, but even those little bouillon cubes and all that shit, like it all works. People have been using that stuff for dieting for a million years. And if you wanted to, you could throw in a little bit of food and a little bit of meat, vegetables if you're eating some vegetables, whatever it might be. I think also too, like I think that people just if you've never tried a carnivore diet before, it's good to lean into like going full blast carnivore and drawing some lines. Maybe you cut out your sodas and all that shit just for a couple of days. But what I would like to challenge people with is see how many days you can stack up. Like it is actually really, really hard to stack up 5 days, 7 days, 10 days. I think that's usually the longest I've ever made it with being like what I would consider to be perfect on any diet that I've ever followed. I think there was when I was doing my bodybuilding thing, I stayed connected to that pretty well. And I went through a whole month where I did exactly what was on the schedule, but I've never been able to follow even my own plan that I have in my head. But see if you can I've only been able to do it for a handful of days. So see if you can bring together 3 days. And if there's a little foul up, you mess up a little bit, you ate a couple things that weren't on plan, they weren't on target, start right back over again.
Yeah. And the thing I should say is like I've only been able to eat like literally just eat beef and water. I think I've only gone like a week. You know, like I'll just simply beat like Michaela. What Michaela Peterson does is actually like an amazing willpower. She says that she has to do it, so she's like feels like forced into it.
I'm skeptical because there's like martinis in there
Yeah.
sometimes, and I'm like, wait, what conversation are we on?
Yeah. There is some things here and there.
We're gonna have to dig up.
Yeah, because if you flare up from anything, so that is an interesting point to make to her, is that if you flare up from anything, it's going to be alcohol. If anything's inflammatory, if anything is inflammatory in the entire world, it's alcohol. We know that vegetable oil's not. We know that sugar's not.
Especially some beer, I think makes most people like.
Yeah. So alcohol is definitely like a no-no. During the Carnivore Month. So that's another. It gives you another thing. Like it cuts. The thing I love about carnivore is not the meat has no magic in it. There's no magic in just eating meat, really. The magic comes from what we talk about all the time is what you're not eating, things that you're not putting in your body, the things that you're not bombarding your system with, and you're getting everything you need in the meat with nothing that you really don't need. Right. There's no excess carbohydrates, there's no excess ingredients or anything to sort of slow you down. So it just sort of keeps you on a straight and narrow path. But like I said, I've only been able to go like 7 days without throwing in something that has to do with a plant. It just seems like, it seems like we were made to utilize both because, we're just so drawn to, adding other stuff in from plants, even spices and things like that.
I think if you've had an issue with, overeating, and everyone knows when they do have an issue, you have a severe issue with it, really challenge it this month and see if you can see how many days you can make it through without feeling like you're overeating. You don't have to really, measure your food or weigh your food or any of that. It's actually kind of interesting that I don't think people even know. A calorie deficit is just so ultra like controversial because you don't always know the exact calories and stuff. That's very hard to determine. But one way to be sure that you're in a caloric deficit, at least with the current information that we have, all the technology, out of all the apps, out of all that we have this, we got that. One way to actually know is through weighing yourself. You weigh yourself, and if you weighed less, then there's sometimes there could be some water manipulation here and there that can happen. But if you are continuously trending downward, then you are probably spending more energy than you're taking in. So for people that really had a hard time with that, draw some hard lines in the sand and say, hey, you know what? At the end, so January, all through January, I'm going to do Carnivore Month. At the end of week 1, I'm going to be down 3 pounds. At the end of week 2, I'm going to be down 6 total pounds, and so on, and go right down the thing. And I think that people should weigh themselves every day. I think it's really important. I know some people it messes with me and stuff like that, but I just think you need to have a reinterpretation, which can be really hard.
Yeah.
It can be really hard when you've gone down that road for so long, but work on having a reinterpretation. It's just a number, and if your goal is to weigh less and you see that you're continually trending downward, that's how you know you're successful. That's how you know you found the sweet spot with the correct amount of food.
A tool that I haven't used in a while comes from Bill Phillips, who created like EAS, right? Haven't used this in a while, but I'm going to use it for World Carnivore Month. Get yourself a calendar, and you put one diagonal line through each day that you ate good, and a diagonal line the opposite way to make an X if you train that day. Mm-hmm. So let's just say to the people out there, if you have a calendar, one line diagonal if you hit all your marks on diet, and one mark the other way if you either did your 3 10-minute walks or you lifted that day. And if you haven't done that, you don't get the double, you don't get the X.
Off the team.
And you want to try to make 31 days in January. Yeah. You want to make 31 X's, right? You don't have to. If you have a couple just slashes, that's cool. But you really shouldn't have any days that have neither in it, because then you're really off the team. You know, you have to do at least one to sort of maintain staying on the team, I guess. But I think that that's a good tool to use, because you get up in the morning, you look at that calendar, and there's like 6 X's. On the 7th day, you're gonna be like, I'm just gonna be lazy today. No, you're gonna get another X, and then you're gonna want another X, and you're gonna want to fill up the whole thing. So I think that that's another great tool just to keep you on track. You know, one of the things I found really interesting about you, in particular, is that you did a bodybuilding show where you were eating, I wouldn't say a lot of carbs. You weren't eating a lot of food in general, but you were eating a good amount of carbs. You were eating mainly like white fish and things like that. And then you came out of this bodybuilding show, and you basically did carnivore after that, if I'm correct. And you've maintained like a really low, I believe, single-digit body fat or close to it since a bodybuilding show. Like you never rebounded off of. You never got smooth. Like you've been like shredded this whole time. Like how do you maintain that? How do you keep that up? Because even pro bodybuilders like ask you like, what the hell are you doing? Like you stay so shredded all the time.
Protein leveraging, eating large amounts of protein every day.
What is protein leveraging exactly?
And just not missing it. Well, protein is not a great energy source for humans. Energy, the way that I look at it, and I don't even know the science of it, but I don't even care.
Who cares?
This is what I think has worked well for me and many other people. I look at protein as it's like a building block. Like it helps build muscle tissue. It helps you maintain muscle tissue. I don't really think that it has much of a caloric cost. It's supposed to be 4 calories per gram of protein, but I would say that if anything, it's probably at least half that, if not even more so. So if you wanted to have, I mean, there's people that do call the protein sparing modified fast. They'll eat like 300 grams of protein, but they're pretty zeroed out on everything else, or everything else is pretty low. It's hard to get just straight protein. But things like that can work and be effective, but only for a really short period of time, because if you don't have the fat, calories, hormonal issues, you'll end up in a whole heap of trouble. So it's not a great idea to do that. But you can use protein to your advantage, and you can have protein be something that just wears you out, just tires you out. You know, if you're somebody that you're obsessed with doing squats, and you want to squat every time you go to the gym. Well, if you wanted to stop yourself from doing that, a good way to do that would be to like run. Like if you just went and ran for 2 miles or something, your will to squat would be compromised. So you have to figure out, how do you crush some of your will to eat? And you do so by just dumping in like copious amounts of protein. Protein powder doesn't work. Yogurt, cottage cheese, liquids, like they don't really work. I think that you need meat. The protein shakes and stuff like that can help, and they can assist, and they're kind of fun. They taste different, stuff like that. So they can be great for that. They can also be great to help you reach your protein requirement for the day, but they're not going to stave off hunger and cravings. And remember, the battle that we're trying to fight with any sort of nutritional plan is ourselves. You know, it's your hunger and it's your cravings. Your hunger and your cravings, those are both things that they can be questioned. Like, you're not actually hungry. You don't actually need a peanut butter cup just because you saw the new peanut butter cups are coming back out again, the crispy ones that are super delicious. You don't actually need that, but you want it. And people talk about comfort food and stuff like that, and it's very understandable. People kind of talk about like stress eating and things like that. There's people that they don't really enjoy drinking. They don't enjoy like getting high or some of these other things that other people utilize as coping mechanisms. Their coping mechanism a lot of time is food. For me, it's like the only coping mechanism that I have is to go eat a ton of food. I love it. But I've learned over the years, like, dude, you better find some other strategies to deal with life and to deal with what's going on around you. So that's when I started to study philosophy more, and I started to look. That's what probably the single greatest thing I ever did for my diet was to change my mind. That was the most important thing. Everything else followed.
Well, there's a great follow on Twitter, Carnivore Aurelius. Carnivore Aurelius.
Yep.
Carnivore Aurelius is like a guy who takes the carnivore diet and mixes it with like stoicism. He does have a couple of weird things where he talks about like tanning your butthole and stuff like that. He talks about some weird stuff like that.
That's weird. I think it's great.
But for the most part, I think his information is great, and he talks about having a more stoic attitude towards things, like don't let things affect you. Just eat meat and do this and that, and sort of like, I think the mindset is really, really important. So when people talk about the war on carbs, I remember there was an episode of Joe Rogan where he said, my friend Chris, he thinks vegetables are bad for you. I don't think vegetables are bad for you. They could have toxins that can trigger certain autoimmune issues, which I do have a lot of, but I do not think that they're bad for you, in that way. The war on carbs is simply a mindset. If I tell you that, hey, maybe you shouldn't eat that, maybe you'll eat it, maybe you won't. But if you have declared war on carbohydrates and something has carbs in it, well, you know that you can't have it. So it's like this. It's almost like a warrior mentality going into it, saying, well, don't let yourself be susceptible to these like little tricks that are being thrown your way. And so the war on carbs is really just a mindset. I think this carnivore attitude is just a mindset. That's why we don't have to be so dogmatic about it. If we have some sugar-free ketchup or something along with something, it's like not that big of a deal. Like you said, I think for the month, it's best to try to get down to bare bones of needing nothing. And then as you continue this along, figure out, to add some more variety into it and things like that.
I just need to look at food, differently. I know sometimes people get upset when someone just says, food is energy, but it is energy. You know, we don't get energy from caffeine. We don't get energy from anywhere else. We get energy from the macronutrients that we consume throughout the day. And if you can just have this understanding of like fat is energy, so is carbohydrate. It's pretty simple, and you can kind of look at your food and just be rational. If I need that energy, oh wow, I think I consumed quite a bit of energy today. Like I don't think I need more. Like the bowl of M&Ms is super enticing. Where, people have nuts and cheese and charcuterie and all this stuff out during the holidays. It all tastes pretty good, right?
Yeah.
But dinner's probably coming, you know? Maybe when you see that stuff sitting there, you either say, I'm going to take like a small thing of it, which can be a trick because you're not going to take a small thing of it. You're going to eat probably a lot. Maybe see if you want to walk with somebody.
Yeah.
See if you can like find another family member or find a kid to throw a football around with or do something different. You do not need to be stuffing yourself with other stuff. I mean, try this on for size and see how it fits. Try not to eat anything while you're cooking. You know, you start to get like ravenous sometimes when you're cooking, and you're like, oh my god! Like if someone was to film you doing that, you'd be really embarrassed. You'd be, oh my god, it's like a fucking animal, and we are animals, so it makes sense. But just eat your meals at your meals, and see if you can chop back on. I mean, that's been a huge revelation for me and for a lot of other people who've lost weight. Is don't really fuck with snacks. On days where you want to be off plan or that's a great day to have some snacks and to mess around with stuff. And
that's a number one question is people go, what do you snack on? You're like, well, this is the carnivore diet. There's really no snacking necessarily. There are some things like I
mean, yeah, you might eat like, I mean, I love carnivore crisps. My whole pantry is.
Yeah, so that like carnivore crisps, but that's almost like a meal. You're just eating, it's eating another piece of meat basically. By the time you eat a bag of carnivore crisps, it's like you ate another steak basically.
Another thing I want to mention about the protein leveraging that's really important is like a lot of times it's not even out of hunger, but it's just out of like habit. I will just eat. So I talked earlier about fake hunger, but sometimes knowing yourself really well, you want to figure out how do you combat your own perverted and sucky habits. How do you tame them? You know, so for me, a lot of times I'll eat just a thing of like just straight up like salmon, or I'll have carnivore crisp. I try to just have just a serving, some sort of serving of protein or two before I eat. And I don't really count. I'm not really even considering that or thinking of that as a meal. It's it might even be like a hard-boiled egg or 2 or 3 or 4. Like it kind of depends on the day. But I'll do that a lot of times before I head home from here, from the office of Super Training, or as soon as I get home, I'll eat some of that stuff. I'll take a shower, and then I'll eat with the family. And I've been doing that and I usually start the day off with like a coffee protein combination thingy. I do that pretty often. And I've been eating like that for like 3 years.
Are you utilizing
2 or 3 years?
I mean, you're pretty much utilizing some sort of like intermittent fasting, right? Like you're not.
Yeah, I fast all the time.
Yeah, so you're skipping meals like.
Yeah, I mean, like fasting, like that probably only happens 2 or 3 times a week, but the other fasts are like it'd be like a coffee fast, which I maybe put MCT or some butter in there, or collagen protein. Like there's not always something in my coffee, but most of the time there is. But I still consider, for me, I can still consider that fasting. It's just like there's really nothing, there's not much in there, and a lot of times it does have something in there. It's just protein. We talked earlier. Protein. A good way to look at protein is just that it doesn't count for anything. Like I know that people get upset, but if Americans, they made a mandate.
They would never do that.
Which is kind of the thing to do nowadays. If they made a mandate and just took everyone's protein percentage up, And you can call all the authorities that you want. Call Greg Doucette, call BioLane, bring in the heavy artillery, and see if they can dispute this. I don't think they would even want to try. But if you just increased the average American, I think they eat like 12 or 13% protein. If the percentage of protein was increased by even just 5%, everybody that has excess body fat would lose weight. Everybody.
And that's just because they're pushing their protein up. It would push other things out of the diet. They wouldn't just necessarily keep overeating, you're saying.
Right. I just don't think that protein it's not the same type of energy source as carbohydrate. People went from 13% to 20% or 18%. It would change a lot of things for people. People's energy calories would be reduced. And if you want to look more into this, follow Ted Naiman. And I think this is actually really important during Carnivore Month. Follow Dr. Sean Baker. Follow Maria Emmerich. What's her husband?
Oh, Maria and Craig Emmerich.
Craig
By the way,
Emmerich.
they have the best book on the carnivore diet. It's called the Carnivore Cookbook. So if anybody wants a real,
simple.
Well, it's beyond a cookbook. The first 150 pages is like a very detailed guide to like all the stuff we're going over, answering all the questions about
Their
nutrient.
kids eat carnivore, and they're making all kinds of different delicious.
It
meals
answers
out of
all these questions about like nutrient density, how many nutrients are in different kinds of meats, what kind of meats to eat, blah 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 blah. Right? Just very very detailed, and it's very simple, and it's like $25 on Amazon. The Carnivore Cookbook by Maria and Craig Emmerich.
Saladino is another great person to follow. Paul Saladino, right? I don't know who else is carnivore. Me and you.
Michaela
Mark's
Peterson.
Really
She does the lion diet. Hers is a little stricter, but for some people they might need that. And I think if they need that, and especially women, I think Michaela is awesome as far as empowering some women to do this. There's not a whole lot of women in the space. There's another girl on YouTube that I think she's a little dogmatic, but she's really good, and she goes by Steak and Butter Girl. So I think like what happens in carnivore is people come in and they're very dogmatic at first, and then they start softening their views. Whereas like I think that's just natural evolution. It's like you come in and you're like, every plant's bad for you. Don't have a sauce. Don't have this. And then as time goes by, like happened with us, you just sort of like loosen up a little bit. But I tell people all the time, no matter what you do on this diet or what variations you try, the most success you'll ever have is the closer you get to just eating meat and water. So no matter what, like if you want to include cheese, hey, that's fine. You can include cheese. But you want to get really lean, stick to meat. You want to include even like chaffles because they have
most
cheese.
likely you'll be less interested in food.
Yes.
When you just have that. When you have just that plan, you're like,
when I do just
what are my options? Just more meat.
When I do just meat and water, I feel like I'm going to bed hungry a lot, and that might be true, but you said you have to, if you really want to get lean, you have to be a little bit hungry. If you want to be normal and average, then you probably don't have to be hungry, which is really nice about this diet. Right. But I think that people need to know it's unrealistic to look like you and never be hungry and never have aches and pains. Like, remember
remember what I said earlier, though. I was hungry when I was fat.
Yeah.
Just think about when you were fatter. Were you hungry?
Yeah.
You're still fucking. So you're hungry either way, so why not look better?
Yeah.
Or why not just work on it?
Well, when I was fatter, though, when I was hungry, I would feed that thing, but then you didn't feel good about it afterward.
But you were still. My point is that if there was a measure of your hunger, it would be the same.
Yeah.
It would be similar. I mean, is some research that the fat cells and having high insulin levels might, cause more of a hunger hormone to go. But like you get hungry throughout the day with and without food. There's charts that you can look at it, and it will show that you get these pulses of hunger throughout the day, and it's with or without food. So you don't really have to feed that hunger all the time.
Yeah, I think also one thing we didn't really mention that much, we talked about it a little bit, when people go on this diet at first, I think they should take some sort of electrolyte in. Like Element is a good electrolyte company. Keto Vitals, like that's the other one, right? They're on Amazon.
I like Keto Vitals a lot. The flavor's really good. Element excellent. They have the chocolate salt one is really good in your coffee. So yeah, it just adds another thing to your.
There's some of them have
tool.
sugar in them, and I'd be careful of those, like just because you don't want added sugar. But even if you had that,
Although it might hydrate you more.
yeah, it may hydrate you more.
But,
Exactly. The other supplement I like
Oh hey,
is Mind Bullet.
it's a Mind Bullet.
Well, actually, just any sort of kratom
Are
product.
these free?
Oh, that's a shot right there. Shot to the dome. So when you take
Take a half.
kratom just basically puts you in a good mood, makes you feel good. Before a lot of people, they say, oh, it kills my appetite, you know? And so I think that's a good thing. If it kills your appetite and it makes you fast better, then great, you know?
Have you messed around with fast, like 24-hour, 48, all that kind of stuff?
I've done 24-hour fasts. I've never gone beyond that. I sort of have a problem with it. I don't know why.
Well, it's fucking stupid to not eat for a couple days. It doesn't feel very good.
Yeah, also, I always have like a freezer packed full of meat.
Yeah.
I'm like, why not eat it? You
There's
know?
certain things that just aren't really. They're not always necessary. But it's a good idea to explore stuff. It's a good idea to mess around with things. But what I've found with the carnivore diet is that the extra results that I got from mainly only eating meat and being like stuck in that box of just eating meat and eggs, basically, it didn't yield results that were worth only staying confined just to that for me. And so that's why I'm like, well, let me have some fruit. But I have to always kind of rein it all back in because some fruit means tons of fruit.
Yeah.
I just have these giant and there's nothing wrong with fruit, but again, it's just energy. You know, I don't really need the extra energy.
What I like about that though is like I was eating tons of fruit also, and then when I turned it off, it was actually pretty easy to just turn off, say like I'm not eating that anymore. And then I stopped eating it. And I know that I can always go back to eating fruit later on. It's just for this time period, I'm cutting it out. And it actually makes sense. I know we don't get too much into like believing in too much ancestral evolutionary stuff, but in all reality, during the winter months, people wouldn't have fruit. Like there wouldn't be any fruit around because it'd all be dead.
Right.
So there's actually a good reason to maybe not eat some fruit now, evolutionary.
It should always change. Yeah,
You know?
should always be moving your nutrition around a bit. I mean, you'll find new ways of cooking stuff for a little while. You'll find new recipes. You'll find sometimes you just get. I was obsessed for a little while, like nectarines, like out of nowhere. Like it was, but then it wasn't fucking nectarine season anymore, so that put a damper on my plans. But man, they're amazing. So I think it's a good idea to like try to find different foods. You and I are always searching for. That's how I stumbled upon Fairlife. You and I are always like trying like the next protein bar and the next this, the next that type stuff.
Well, they make everything now.
Yeah,
I found milk
I
with
love all
no.
that shit.
I found milk that has no carbs in it,
Right.
which is kind of amazing and a great thing to drink on a carnivore diet. Like, I'm gonna drink that all Carnivore Month because why not? Like, it's got it's high in fat, high in protein, and it's just a simple
And
way.
they made a lower fat one too. You even said, right?
They make a low fat one also. Yeah, low fat and zero carbs. They just filter it. But you know, I'm not really into drinking a lot of my calories, but sometimes like sometimes I just want it. Like a glass of milk is great sometimes.
Yeah, I don't really drink milk,
Especially
but
with chaffles.
I like cottage cheese a lot. So when I was eating fruit, I would mix the fruit and cottage cheese together, which probably doesn't sound very good.
Oh, pineapple and cottage cheese is amazing.
But fucking amazing. And there's God, what's the name of that company? Cottage cheese, but it has fruit. It has like fruit flavor in it. It'll add like 2 fruits in it.
Yeah, that's good culture.
Yeah, good culture, and that's the same.
There's also the yogurts
cottage
like
cheese,
Too Good. That's very low sugar, but it's fruity. That's like okay. That's passable on a carnivore
And
diet.
there's some like yogurts and stuff.
Thor's Skyr called. Thor's Skyr is like a yogurt that's like made with stevia.
There's like Icelandic ones, and there's all kinds of different ones.
Yeah.
That just there's tons of fucking.
The best is
protein
just
in
the
those.
plain Greek yogurt if you're gonna eat things like that on your diet, and that's just up to you whether or not you consider that carnivore or not. How much weight you have
I
to
usually
lose
have
or how
protein
many.
shakes. Even when I'm on a carnivore diet, I usually have like even before I made the steak shake, I would have other types of protein shakes. I don't see any issue. Again, it just depends on like what you're trying to do. Our main recommendation is to take the path of the most amount of resistance as possible, kind of start, but to have it not be so awful. Eat more food, mess around with maybe getting into trying some of these different sauces. I was just mentioning that I do think it's a good idea for people to investigate their taste buds a little bit. I don't think that people know what ground beef and what grass-fed beef, and I think they don't know what these things are actually supposed to taste like. Actually, it's actually a decent test too. If you don't really like the taste of like grass-fed beef versus regular beef, I think it's a good idea to like figure that out a little bit more. I'm not saying you got to force yourself to like grass-fed beef, but I think it's a good idea to really know. I mean, when you have children, they will look to mom a lot of times. They'll be like, "Do I like that?"
Yeah.
You shouldn't, as an adult, you should really know what you really like a lot and what you don't. But you also may have, just like a little kid, you got to sometimes get used to some stuff that you don't want to eat.
Yeah, there's also some interesting supplements that we didn't mention. Like Paul Saladino has a company called Heart and Soil. Sells like the capsules of different liver, different organs. If you like that stuff, there's a company called Ancestral Supplements that I think Liver King is involved in. And that's a great supplement. But also, you actually made Liver King's jacked. You made a product that I think is really amazing. It's called the Steak Shake.
Yep.
And that's a really interesting product because you put like organ meats and different like beef proteins together to make sort of a carnivore shake, and that's something people can have also during this time. You have both the whey protein, Slingshot protein, and you got a steak shake. So
a lot more stuff to do, and the steak shake is something that we've run into some issues with keeping a good supply of it in stock, but we have worked through that, so should be back. Should be back on our website really soon, and we have a new protein that will be coming soon, and it's called This Is the Way, kind of in the Star Wars realm there. And then we have a newly revamped Keto Pro, which I think people are really going to like. Has avocado oil in it, and it's just
you made
fantastic
salted caramel steak shake. I saw it, like I get like sneak peeks of things, and I'm like looking in an office the other day, and it's like salted caramel. I almost wanted to steal the bottle, but it was like obviously Andrew was using it. I think it was actually empty. Andrew was using it for like photography or something, and I'm like, salted caramel.
It's really good. And we have electrolytes and stuff coming out too.
Things take a while now.
It's all new, and it's like just an enormous amount of money when you start to open up like a whole new category. You're talking about like hundreds of thousands of dollars going out to some of these POs, and then you're like, we got that much money out, and then
what about like lifting?
Coming at you many different angles.
What about like lifting and training? Like, say somebody's like fairly new to this carnivore diet, like they've never done anything. Like, what would you suggest that they do? Like, walk into a gym, start walking? What do you suggest somebody starts?
If you can have physical activity be part of like your everyday life, that's great. Like where you're doing other stuff, like maybe you like to play pickup games of basketball, or maybe you like tennis, maybe you like golf, or maybe you like jogging with your dog or bikes or something. So that's amazing. If you like that, there'll be nothing more powerful that you'll ever do than that, because you'll burn a ton of calories doing that. And I would encourage people to also teach their children that, like walks in the park and playing and just all that stuff is really, really important, because you can only burn so many calories in the gym. Not even really why you go there. You're looking for out of the gym is to increase some muscle mass, to increase some size, so that you are putting your metabolism more in your favor, so that you burn more energy every day. And so if you're trying to maximize your metabolism, and you want to shift and have a recomp of your body, then you're going to want to go to a gym, and you're going to want to lift some weights. How to lift weights? there's so many different things that you could do, but just simply doing 3 sets of 10 and doing a warm up first, whatever that looks like. Make sure that you're ready for whatever it is you're about to do. 3 sets of 10. It has worked for a really long time.
For everybody.
Yeah, use a smooth tempo. You're not trying to like lift 100 miles an hour. Maybe 2 or 3 seconds on the way up, 2 or 3 seconds on the way down, maybe a second for a pause, and work through that until you've done 3 sets. If you'd like, you can do something like a chest bench press machine or something like that, or dumbbells. And in between that, you can do something like a lat pull down. You can do 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 10. Now you're going back and forth with some different muscle groups. If you're confused about muscle groups and stuff, you might want to get a book, buy some sort of book that shows you the anatomy of it. But a lot of times the machines will even have like
it's that simple. Yeah,
certain things lit up. My son has been in here for the last maybe year or so, and he does what I call farting around. He's just kind of like dicking around, like he's on this machine, and then he sees his buddy doing something else, and then he's on that machine. He's just kind of, that's the way I think a lot of people should start their workouts, and it can kind of always be that way. It doesn't have to, you don't have to really turn into this, maniac person that's like lifting like a lunatic. But I do think that resistance training is where it's at. I also am a huge proponent of weighted carries, trying to figure out how to like drag something, pull something, walk with something. The thing that I like about that is it's really encouraging because anyone can do it. Anyone can drag a sled with some weight attached to them. Anyone that possesses the ability to walk can do that. Farmers carries, just grabbing some dumbbells. Our dad has had a lot of health issues over the years. He's in his 70s. He could grab some dumbbells and walk with them. Our mother-in-law, she's a little bit healthier, but she's like 73, 74. She started a weight training program, and she's actually been doing, like she was telling me the other day, she started doing like some farmers carries and stuff. She's like, what are those things called? The farmer something? And I was really happy because I just thought that was cool. She previously was diabetic, but think about all the people that that are in your family or your friends that are suffering, that are heavy, that might have disease. Pretty much all of them can grab some dumbbells and just walk with them. So
a lot of people say, it's like it's easy for you guys to say you have like a meat sponsor, you make a lot of money or blah blah blah, but this can be done. What I want to let people know is this can be done really really cheaply, and the way that can be done really, like I'll give you a story just to explain how it can be done cheaply. Ted Naiman, who's a doctor and a friend of ours, he was on my podcast a long time ago, and he had a story about a guy who was homeless, who basically only had like a couple bucks a day. Like he was living on a few bucks a day, and he would go to the dollar store and get butter and eggs and sometimes bacon, sometimes some sort of like ground beef thing that he would find. And we get this stuff at like the dollar store, And he went in and he bought a pan, and he was cooking this stuff like on his little stove, like in his van,
Right.
So I just think that like
You can make it work.
Yeah, I think when people say like, think about the $5 coffee that you buy every day that can cover your beef and eggs.
One of my favorite sayings is things aren't too expensive, just make more money. Like I love that mindset because we all possess the ability to do better in life. We all possess the ability to do better. So it's not necessarily about you trying to figure out a way to be like rich necessarily. And expensive is different to each person, right? Like you can really go up the ladder, and again, using somebody like The Rock. The Rock is not wealthy in comparison to some of the other people, like just off the charts wealthy, right? So I think that it's a nice mindset to think I think I could figure that out.
Yeah.
But it might take me a long time, not there yet, or the main thing is to have a skill set. That's what allows you to be able to afford those things. And you know what? All this stuff that we do and all the stuff that we share, it is easier. That's why we share it.
Yeah.
It like literally is easier
think,
for us. We grew
yeah.
up in a great household, and like, but that's part of the reason why we're so excited. Maybe we were somehow selected to do it or something. I don't know what the situation is, but you also can make things easier for
also
yourself,
think-
and we've done.
I also think like mindset is really important because a lot of people I tell about it, they just go, that's too expensive for me. You know, I'm on a budget. I can't really afford it. I do understand, like, if you have a family and you got to feed the family and you're trying to eat this and this.
It's just an excuse though, because
But it is ground beef and eggs, right? And like even our Uncle Jamie, who lives off of Social Security,
Right.
he was here visiting. He was here yesterday. And he basically, you know, he said to me, oh, I can't, you know, I don't have much.
So much. And
Yeah, he smokes and
find other places.
But he's like, I don't have much money. I'm like, yeah, well, you smoke cigarettes, you figure out money for that. You know, you
Right.
drink alcohol, you figure out money for that. And then by the time our conversation was done, he's like, I'm going to give this a shot. He's like, I can definitely afford it. That's just an excuse.
So
You
there
know?
are many people in this country that are suffering, don't have. But we went through a pandemic where people didn't work for like 2 years. Our parents and most people's parents put up so many fucking points on the scoreboard that no one really needs to work. I know people think I'm insane when I say that, but think of all the people that you know. Anybody that's listening to this might be listening to it on their $1,300 iPhone from a climate-controlled room or a climate-controlled vehicle that they drive every day. People aren't lacking money. People are lacking direction. That's my opinion.
There's a thing, like a lot. So I think Paul Saladino said this was interesting. There's no lack of calories in this country, right? Like nobody's lacking calorie. Like people are lacking nutrients. There's nutrient deficiencies,
Right.
but there's nobody that's like lacking in calories. Like even you know in the poorest communities, you find people that are extremely like overweight because they figured out a way to get the things that they need.
People that
you know?
really don't have money are not listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
They probably don't have the ability to.
Well, so I think we're about ready to wrap this thing up. Is there any last things you have, like advice to give people if they're trying the carnivore diet here in January? I'm going to actually be updating people on what I'm doing. I'm going to put up these little podcasts like every couple days and check in with people and answer questions and everything like that. You guys, you have any plans over at your podcast to do any stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it a bunch. We always do. I think the thing I just want to encourage people to give it a try. I mean, work on reframing your mind. Take it as a challenge. Any old person can point out problems and flaws, and anyone can draw up excuses. But as you're thinking about this, don't think about the 17 things that you thought of during the show. Don't think about all your yeah buts. Take those and shove them up your butt. And instead, just say, I could probably use something different. I bet this would be something that would be, if you don't think it would be useful to you, then there's no reason to mess with it. But
I don't think there's one person.
You should go for it.
I don't think there's one person on the planet that this would not be useful for, unless, of course, you're like a diehard vegan and you might be just like
Right.
against it, right? For those reasons, which I don't even want to get into.
But maybe you don't like the taste of meat, so there are some
Yeah,
caveats
there's
to it. But you're right. It will work
But
just
for
fine.
most people, the idea of going on any sort of like food challenge, like if this was a smoothie challenge, we'd have so many people like, oh, I want to do it, because
it's like inviting people to Legs Day. No one wants to come.
Yeah, nobody's gonna come to Legs Day, but they're gonna come to hey, it's a pizza party at the gym. You know what I mean? They'll show up. That's why I used to have pizza for breakfast, right? Tell
the
people
workouts,
show up at the gym. We're gonna have
Yeah.
pizza for breakfast, and people would show up and like, where's the pizza?
And we would just train our faces
Yeah,
off.
you're like, it's not, And so I think anybody in the world that just gives themselves 30 days, especially the beginning of a new year. We're going into like a whole new year. It's fresh. It's like inviting you to be successful this year. And the way that you're going to start out this year successful is that you're going to go on this carnivore diet. You're going to check the boxes every day, and you're going to see it through to the end. And when you get to the end, you're going to know that you've accomplished something and that you've actually done something.
Yeah. we know that you're going to mess up. You're most likely going to mess up. So it might be a few people listening to this that follow it all the way through. If they're able to do that, they're stronger than I am, because I'm not able to do that. So just understand that you're going to mess up, and see how many days out of the 31 days that you can, just as you kind of pointed out, hit that X. Had good nutrition for the day, that's one line. And if you also either did 3 10-minute walks, or you did some sort of lifting, whoosh, put that other line through it. And maybe there's some days that only have a slash one way. That's okay. And maybe there's days where there's no slash at all. Maybe you went 2-3 days and you just, I don't know, you just went off track and you said, fuck it. But get back on it and give it a try. I also want to say that I tried the carnivore diet probably like 3 or 4 years ago. Like whenever you told me about it, and Dr. Baker like announced like World Carnivore Month.
Yeah.
Which I think
He just made it up.
I think it's fucking awesome. And I do it every January because it is a nice reset, and it's a good reminder of like, I do need to stop being focused more on that. But the first time I did it for like 2 weeks, and I was following it pretty good. And after a little bit, it kind of made me crazy. It was like, because I was just fending off too much. I was putting too much. I was just putting too much steak in it.
Yeah.
And so I went off it for a couple days, and I was like, I still think there's something to that. I really liked the way some of it felt. But then I got back on my horse, and I had dairy in there, and it felt great, and I've been messing with it ever since. So just, your experience is going to be your experience. Don't get thrown off. Just try to stick to it the best.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, we've been on this journey for a really long time. The first time I ever messed with a carnivore diet when I was in college, when I was training with Mike O'Hearn back in the day at Gold's Gym, and our friend Ron Fedko told me, hey, you're a good power lifter. You can squat like 600 pounds, but you're just too fat. And he was very blunt about it. And then I said, well, I don't know.
Like, what?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what to eat or what to do. And he's like, red meat and water. Boom. And just basically like that day.
You had me try it too. It worked great.
That day was absolutely life-changing because it went from red meat and water into like...
we didn't know anything. It was just ground beef, basically.
Yeah, it was just ground beef. And then we continued on into like the war on carbs. We followed Dan Duchesne's Body Opus diet, which was crazy, like this really crazy, insane ketogenic diet. And we've been on this journey for like 30 years, right? But the thing I find interesting about it is that we keep coming back to the simplest form, the simplest thing. Like, what can I eat? Oh, meat and water. And
we always go back to squats too, right?
The more you come back to these things that work, I think the more success you'll have in life.
Love it.
All right. Happy holidays, everybody. Let's get out of here.
I'm going to take a poop.